Hello students, welcome to another class of the Open Elective course, Public Relations and Advertising. So we will be looking at the final part of advertising in this video, after which we'll move on to public relations. Now, in this class we will be looking at different ways in which advertisements are made by advertising agencies. We'll be looking at the different people that are involved, the different processes that are involved in making of an advertisement. So let's get into it. Now, first of all, this process of advertising, we have already covered quite a lot of it in our discussions about advertising, about the basic steps that has to be done before you actually plan to make an advertisement, and then what are the processes that are there inside while making the advertisement, and finally we talked about how advertisers usually review what they've done and how much it is connected with the audience or whoever they're actually aiming to hit at. So let's go through it in a very step-by-step manner. Get to know what the stages are of actually making sure that a message is sent out from a seller to a buyer, hits him properly, and is inducing him into action, which is the basis of advertising. Now, what are the steps? Step one. Okay. Most of these steps are actually very self-explanatory, so we'll cruise through them without quite a lot of things. But when there are some certain aspects of it which we need further explanation, I'll go ahead and help you guys with it. Briefing is a very simple aspect. The advertiser needs to brief about the product or the services which has to be advertised, and doing the SWOT, called as SWOT analysis of the company and product. SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Sort of an analysis that is very basic analysis that is done of any kind of project that you do. You have a SWOT analysis done to understand what are the strengths, 1, weaknesses, 2, opportunities, 3, and threats regarding any kind of project. Now in this case, the project is basically the advertisement, and the advertiser basically briefs the agency or the people who are actually going to make that advertisement about what is to be advertised. 2, knowing the objective. Obviously, yes, what is the objective? It is about delivering a message. What kind of message it is, and why is it done for? Why is it done basically, and who is it done for exactly? These kind of questions are derived from whatever the objective is. One should first know the objective or the purpose of advertising, i.e., what message is to be delivered to the audience. Step 3, research. The most basic and most important step that you need to do is to do some various kinds of research: market research, audience research, what kind of product you're selling, based on that, what kind of advertisement you would want to make. A lot of things go into this, and basically quite a lot of this research involves market research, trying to understand who are there in the market right now selling similar things, what kind of messages are they delivering, where are they actually advertising, different things related to whatever is available in the system right now, and trying to see if they can do the others one better, to actually making a better product in the sense, in this case, it's not the product that you're selling, it's the advertisement as a product that I'm talking about. Now, step 4 is target audience. We've talked about what target audience is. These are the people who are most likely to buy the product, and which means they are the customers with quite a lot of potential to actually see the message, receive it, take a decision based on it, and go out and buy your things. The target should be appropriately identified without any confusion. You remember we were talking about television advertising and broadcast advertising generally, where people actually divide, advertisers usually divide the target population into segments, and based on these segments they actually make slots. So all this is based on understanding who wants what. For example, if the product is a health drink for growing kids, then the target customers will be the parents who are going to buy, and not the kids who are going to drink it. It's a very basic understanding of who is actually going to take a decision to get the message, process it, and then go out and buy your product. So you're trying to understand who this should be marketed to. In case of television and radio, like I told you, timing, scheduling, all these things come into play. I think that is the next step, which is media selection. Now that the target audience is identified, one should select an appropriate media for advertising, so that the customers who are informed about the product and are willing to buy are successfully reached. One very good example is this of this type of proper media selection that you can see are the retail sections of, let's say, Amazon, Big Bazaar, all these heavy retail giants, you can see that they advertise quite aggressively in print journalism also. It's not just in television. They know that they can actually get full page advertisements even though they cost quite a lot, but it gives the consumer, and even on those pages, when you example see that there is a huge sale, or even local supermarkets near you do this very frequently in your local newspapers, they get out a full page ad, and in that ad you will see each and every item which has a discount in minute, in very small picture with the rate below it, and there will be hundreds of products in the page itself. So they know that anybody who's reading a newspaper, unlike in television, takes their own time to actually go through this whole list and find out what they need. They would actually find things which are actually very low down in the list also, but it gives them certain time to actually go through this whole thing. So retail, in that sense, television advertising for retail is very huge, obviously, but it's also very expensive, and more importantly, doesn't give the time for consumers to actually decide with what they want from it. If you give a whole list in a television ad for 2 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, they're not going to be able to go through that whole process of actually searching for what they want and finding what the best discount, let's say. So media selection in that sense is very, very important. Retail, huge retail chains basically, which have out and out sales, supermarkets and stuff like that, they prefer something like a newspaper, because the audience who's reading it have enough time to decide what they want by slowly going through whatever is there, which is not possible in a very timely, organized, time-based scheduling, which is done in television and radio. So that's why media selection is quite important. Social media is selected via quite a lot nowadays, not just because of the people who use it and the reach it has, but also because of the very advanced analytics that is used inside it to mine data from different people. Now, so because of these things, media selection becomes quite a important step. Now, when you are actually selecting media that you need, you have to see that it goes along with the budget that you have. So setting the budget also becomes an important part of your process of advertising. So what do? You actually try to see what is your reach, what is the area which you are actually trying to reach. Let's say you are actually trying to advertise for a local farmers market. This is an example I've used before. You're advertising for a local farmers market. Would you want to go and give a very expensive ad on a television channel? No, not quite. It's not very practical to do that, because who you are actually expecting are people from your local community coming there and buying your product and going back. Yes, a community radio, very good space for such an activity. Also, your local newspapers, not the national newspapers with your local editions, but you would actually look for some kind of a local community newspaper, local community radio, any kind of thing that can actually reach the people that you actually want to come and take part in whatever you're trying to sell, or the event that you want them to actually participate in. Now, the budget is vastly different. So, based on what your requirement is and based on what your budget is, people actually select what kind of media they want to advertise in. So you wouldn't actually want to spend all your money in advertising, because you actually need money to actually prepare whatever product that you are actually making, or setting up whatever production services that you actually have. Now, step 7 is designing and creating the ad. First, the design, that is the outline of the ad on papers, is made by copywriters of the agency. Then the actual creation of ad is done with the help of art directors and creative personnel of the agency. We will go into that in quite a lot detail by the end of this session. So we'll just leave it there. It's basically telling you that there is a lot of processes involved in understanding what is required, making the design, and getting a team of people to actually write, visualize, plan what you need in terms of pre-production, produce an ad, and then do whatever post-production is required to it, and get the final output. Step 8, perfection. Then the created ad is re-examined and the ad is redefined to make it perfect to enter the market. You do like some kind of last minute finishing touches to see what is actually required for it in the current market. So these are the steps, the process of advertising, till the fact that you are actually making the ad and you've got it ready. Now, what is actually the next thing? You're going to decide where you're going to place the ad. Now, how do you decide how you are going to place the ad? One of the major factors for that is the target audience. Now, we've covered another part of it also, which is media selection. Whatever media you have, it's based on that. Let's say you're talking about television. The place will be decided according to the target customers, where the ad is most visible clearly to them. The finalization of time on which the ad will be telecasted or shown on the selected media will be done by the traffic department of the agency. Now, by traffic, they actually mean Do you remember that we were actually talking about media buying agencies who actually look for these things and find space where people can advertise? I gave the example of hoardings as one, and the other example I gave was television, where they actually see how many times the ad has been played over and over again, the contract what is being signed, etc., etc. So how much time you're actually putting it on air in the sense in airwaves, television or radio, etc., etc. So you're actually seeing what is the place and time that is perfectly suited to your ad. Quite a lot of it is actually covered during market research, where the segmentation and the target audience is actually done properly and it is pitched for a certain slot. What is the next step? Execution. Finally, the advertisement is released with perfect creation, perfect placement, and perfect timing in the market. So you're actually getting all the elements of how you've created your ad, where to actually place it, and finally the timing. Actually, what actually is happening in the market? Is there a trend of people actually buying things in a market? More to do with forecasting techniques that people use in marketing and how you actually sell, trying to assess what the demand is, driving up the demand, etc., etc., through your advertisements. Step 11 is performance. Obviously, for any kind of process that you do, there has to be any kind of some kind of feedback mechanism where you actually get whatever response the customers have. You reevaluate what is actually there, what was there, what is supposed to be done, what are the feedback from people. So these things are done so that the next ad campaign will be even more better. You want to bridge the uncertainty even more. You want more people to actually buy what you're actually trying to sell. The last step is to judge the performance of the ad in terms of the response from the customers. Whether they are satisfied with the ad and the product, did the ad reach all the targeted people, was the advertisement capable enough to compete with the other players, etc. So you're doing another round of market research and trying to understand where you are placed now once your ad has gone out. Has the revenues increased? Has there been a good response for your ad? Is there any disaster that struck when you actually made your ad, and was there a whole PR exercise trying to firefight? Different things are looked at, different angles are looked at, which segment it actually clicked with, which people have actually gone out and actually inquired about your product, etc. So these are evaluations of your ads performance. Every point is studied properly and changes are made if any. You take feedback positively. So now that we've understood what these individual steps are, we'll just get into understanding what the actual process of making an advertisement is. Now, till now we were looking at the processes of from end to end, what are the entire processes of even starting to plan an advertisement till finishing the whole process and getting feedback to make sure that your next whole cycle of making an ad is actually going to be better and it's got more impact. So here, the process of advertising, what we are going to look at is the process of how an advertisement is made. So there are a lot of people involved in actually making an advertisement. One of the first people who actually is involved in the process of making an advertisement is the copywriter. Copywriter is a person who actually puts whatever ideas are there in the client's minds onto a piece of paper in a certain way with catchy words, some things that actually tie up, gives a certain language structure to what the ad is actually trying to say. Essentially, they are making a blueprint of the message that is finally delivered via any medium, whether it's newspaper, magazine, radio, television, telemarketing scripts, any kind of thing. Even in internet or web-based marketing, you would have people actually sitting and writing down what the basic idea is. What is the crux of the message that you're trying to deliver? And based on this writing procedure is how you actually develop more things in the subsequent steps. So what is copywriting? Copywriting is the skill of choosing the right words and techniques of arranging them smartly to promote a business, product, service, idea, or a person. It's as simple as that. You're just writing really well and putting it in a very good format to make sure that the people who are actually reading your thing are induced to actually buy the product. It's as simple as that. Selection of words and its presentation largely depends upon the media through which it is planned to convey. So if you go on social media, the kind of language that I use in social media to make sure that it's very attractive to the people who use in social media is going to be completely different to how a copywriter will approach an ad that is going to go on a national newspaper. It's very different based on whichever media is being used. The copywriting has some essential elements required to develop a convincing ad. Some of them are: you need a heading first of all of what you're actually trying to say. It should be very brief, 3 or 4 or 5 lines, sorry, 3 or 4 or 5 words which actually convey the whole thing. Copy, body copy, basically you're writing down what goes into the body and what you're actually trying to sell. Slogans we all know, different kind of slogans that are used to keep a sense of brand retention in people's mind of what the product is and what you are actually selling. Slogans actually make sure that people don't actually forget. Taglines also similarly, people remember a lot of advertisements for the taglines that is being made. Jingle lyrics, jingles are all these songs that you actually hear, which are very familiar to quite a lot of people depending on whatever product you're buying. Jingles are the songs that are associated with the brands. Scripts for audio and video ads. Copywriters usually write the scripts also sometimes, get to make sure that the script is also well written. Then there are white papers, press releases, and other written material such as emails, articles, and blogs. Now, they do a lot of writing essentially for the advertisement agencies, and they make sure that for any brand or advertisement, they actually go through quite a lot of volume, quite a volume of writing material for people to actually start working on the ad. Sometimes what the copywriter writes and prepares is finally used in the ad itself, but it also lays a foundation for whatever work that is done after that for the product or the service or the idea itself. So it acts as a foundation. What is slogans? Slogan writing, as you just talked about. So advertising slogans are short phrases used in advertising campaigns to generate publicity and unify a company's marketing strategy. Now, you can see a few of them which are very famous for all of us. Nike's Just Do It, FedEx When There Is No Tomorrow, sort of tells imminent delivery of transit of goods is what FedEx specializes in, as you all know. And When There Is No Tomorrow sort of gives the feeling that yes, FedEx is also as urgent as they say. They also consider time very valuable, so my package is going to be very early. MasterCard is also a very famous ad campaign. There are things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Almost all of their advertisements are shaped this way. They show something very luxurious. They show something that a person is paying for something and getting whatever. But then they show something that is very human, very emotional, and they say that there are some things money cannot buy. But the next line turns it around and says, for everything else, there is MasterCard. So it's a very famous ad campaign. It's a very successful ad campaign also for a lot of reasons. Companies create logos to use in various marketing efforts in hopes that the phrases will stick in people's minds. Just like I said, Nike, Just Do It is pretty famous. Every single person knows that. Anybody sees the tick usually thinks about Nike and the tagline that is Just Do It. That way, when a consumer needs a product or service offered by a variety of companies, that consumer will choose the product or service that is top of the mind from slogan recognition. It's the same as brand recognition, brand loyalty. It's sort of retaining that image in your mind, image of your brand in the mind of the consumer. Another aspect of advertising, making an advertisement, in the order if you go from copywriting and then slogan writing, the next one is visualization. How do you visualize what your ad will be? So it's very creative process. Usually people who work in visual design field, graphical design field, actually quite a lot of them go into the ad space and become people who are working to make advertisements based on the ideas that they have, and it's very visual what they're trying to get. Even advertisements that appear on the radio where there is a family talking about something that they need to buy a car or a new house or a new, let's say, cooking essential, all of these things will have their sounds and noises coming from the from the radio, but still they try to paint you a picture of what is actually the scene. So even in media which is very sound based or only audio system, they actually try to paint a picture for you with similar sounds and similar dialogues, because visualization and our mind seeing what we actually want to see and something new or something fresh is actually very much the core of understanding why visualization is important and why visual designers and graphic designers end up quite a lot in ad companies, because it's very important that whatever the company is actually trying to show, the advertising agency is going to show, it should actually straight away hit the mind of the target audience, because you are trying to connect to them and you're going to deliver a message that the seller is actually asking you to. Creative team, which includes writers, artists, and production personnel, visualization creating an advertisement. Creative teams do visualization in suggesting the composition or the situation that dramatizes the theme of the advertisement. Now, this is one example of McD's What's for Lunch campaign, Solve Lunch First campaign. So it was actually released in university spaces, if I'm not wrong. So the whole point is that there are people who actually read about Shakespeare in that college. There are people who study what Einstein is saying, and there are people in the Department of English who read about what I'm guessing that is Jane Austen. But the whole point is that these are people that had some things in their minds, who were very smart people, who are very geniuses and very creative people. So they're sort of tying up to that and then putting it in the head. What's for lunch? What's for lunch? So the whole point is that you're very much attracted to that visualization because it shows things in a certain way where you are actually, oh, that's very clever, that's very nice to see. So it stays in your mind, and McD's logo is pretty evident, self-evident, and the size of the corporation does afford it in-house agencies that can come up with brilliant advertisement campaigns like this. But at the same time, you can see that it's visualized pretty nicely, and it's visualized for a certain space and for a certain audience. Another advertisement from, I'm guessing that is Unilever, because you can see the U there, and one of the products of Unilever is Lipton tea, and it's given there how the process actually comes from the right, and shows, if you look from the left, you can see that the freshness goes right back into the tea plantations, which is there on the right side and top of U. From there you can see that the tea roots go to the process, get churned, get mixed, dried, put into packets, and comes out as Lipton tea. So sort of show you that there is like a certain element of freshness right from the tea plantations. It's a certain process, and it's very natural. Now the U of that whole thing is the parent company, that is Unilever, and it's a very brilliant ad campaign. They have quite a lot of products of theirs in the U shape of Unilever, and it's a very beautifully done ad campaign, so to say. So part of this is understanding the visual aspect and the importance of the visual design associated with an advertisement. Visualization is a creative imagination of idea which is converted into an effective advertising message. It is an ability to imagine in the mind about how the ad will look when it is completed. Essentially, it's a mental process of creating mental images of a well-balanced whole made up of different elements. So it's sort of telling you what the whole process of visualization is by telling you that it is a way of actually trying to understand how your ad will look and then working towards it. So people who are artists, who are very good designers, actually sit and try to visualize how the ad can be. Now all this is based on the briefings that has been given to them, like I said, during the steps of understanding how advertising process goes. They've been briefed, market research has been done, and they've been told there are some aspects of it which we find are very important. We need you to include that in the design. So that is how this actually goes, and it's pretty, it's a very creative process. There is not quite a lot of repetition. For example, you can't have people who actually do the same thing over and over again, because you need it to be fresh and very new every single time an ad is actually thought about or a campaign is actually started. Now, another very important step of understanding how to make an advertisement is script writing. Because if you are actually making a visual advertisement or radio advertisement or any kind of advertisement in any broadcast advertising sectors especially, you would actually need some kind of a script to go along with it. You would actually have to write what actually happens in the ad that you've prepared. If you take ad films that you see in your television, all of them go through a certain process of pre-production, production, and post-production. Script writing comes in the pre-production aspect, trying to understand what all you need for your pre-production is actually to assess what all you need for production and how you can actually pull off this whole visual idea. Script writing comes in the pre-production part, where people actually try to write down how the whole process of, people try to write down what the advertisement is, step by step, frame by frame. That is how actually they try to do it. Frame by frame is more to do with storyboarding, but script actually tries to essentially cover quite a lot of what actually happens in the ad, along with the setting, the people, the product, the angles of camera, how long it is going to be, what are the sounds that are associated with it. Everything is going to be put down in a script, just like any other movie script or something that is done. So the goal of an advertisement script is to have a well thought out vehicle to craft advertisements that sell. Steps to writing a persuasive advertising script: you review the company vision, what is the competition doing, You keep it very simple, don't make it very complicated, because the consumers don't really like a lot of complex ideas fitted into a very small advertisement given there. It should be very simple and clean. Don't forget the call to action, because ultimately what you're trying to do is get people to buy the product. You're inducing them to take action on whatever message that you're delivering to them. Script writers usually come from a team of copywriters or people who have actually worked on ad films, who understand how the script flows, understand the visual language of how ad films work out, the timing, everything. So it's a very detailed process, and people who actually write scripts for advertisements are well aware of what all are required to be put into that advertisement for the best way to deliver the message that they want to give. So this is storyboard that I was actually talking about when we talked about frame by frame understanding of what goes into an advertisement. The storyboard for a TV commercial functions similar to the outline of a story. It is a shorthand version of the final product that you can use to plan ahead. They would draw out each frame and try to see where to place the brand or where to place the product so that it resonates quite a lot with the audience. Commercials, for example, work with limited time frames that are often no longer than 30 seconds. So the advantage is that for movies, if you need to prepare a storyboard frame by frame, you would actually have to sit and make a 1.5 hour movie storyboard, which is quite a huge time. 30 seconds, not so much. Even then, 30 seconds, you would need quite a lot of storyboards. But it's very much limited, and you can actually do a little bit more detailing on whatever has to be there in each frame because it's very short. When you review the storyboard, you are able to estimate how much time you have to convey your information. The storyboard breaks down the commercial shot by shot, so you can determine how much time you can spend on each shot to keep the commercial within its time constraints. Like I said, a very small time, but you get to plan it out much more better because of the short time. The storyboarding is just another way of visualizing the script. You have a written script with you, then you try to write down, then you try to draw whatever is there in the script into a certain frame and use it as a single frame for a certain kind of shot. The next shot is going to be drawn like that, and the next shot is gone. The example that is given there of Cheetos, you can see a certain boy is actually sitting there, food, a Cheetos packet comes flying, is there, goes into the bowl, milk is added, and then the toy that is there inside the Cheetos is going to jump on a motorcycle and then do all kinds of things. And finally, you see Cheetos in the background. In the foreground, you have a mom feeding the. Oh, it's not Cheetos. Sorry, it's Cheerios. It's an American brand. So you have the mom giving the cereal to the kid. So different kinds of advertisements use different kind of storyboards, but it's easier to make a storyboard in an advertisement because of the little bit of time limit that they have compared to other visual media. Now, ad filmmaking in general is a huge topic in its own. People do degrees and courses on that completely, but we'll have a very brief understanding of what ad filmmaking is. So, an advertising film is a very short, concise film that is usually 10 to maximum of 60 seconds long. The aim is to draw attention to a product, a brand, or a service and to promote its sales. The provision of detailed information, as in an image film or a documentary film, is not in the foreground. So, the basic meaning of what an advertisement film and what is the purpose of an advertisement film brings down the whole timeline of an advertisement film to less than 60 seconds long. Nobody is going to play more than 60 seconds long because that itself is a huge expense for any kind of advertisers. You see in television during whatever program you're watching that most of the advertisement will not be about 10 seconds for that matter, 10, 20, 30, 20 seconds. If it goes on to 30 seconds, even the viewer starts asking himself, okay, why is this advertisement not finishing? You expect it to have a certain time frame associated with it, and and people actually understand the language of an ad film also. Now, what is the history of ad film making? We'll just go through it in general. In the 1950s, the television gives the advertisement film a broad impact. 1960s and 70s has different people using advertising figures and brand faces against other competitors. 1980s and 1990s, people start looking for a USP, which is even now a terminology that is used. USP is unique selling point. What is special about your product? What is special about your advertisement, for example? From 2000, disenchantment with advertising. Advertising films are reinventing themselves. The same tried and tested way of actually making ads is slowly starting to change. From 2010, social media and content marketing, advertisement is thought of differently. You have micro-targeted advertising, you have different kinds of web-based advertising, social media advertising, social media influencer-based advertising, different kind of methods are now being used to produce ad films which will induce people to buy something. And now a very brief idea of what ad filmmaking is, because like I told, it's a huge process. Although it involves very few people as a team, working in a team. The creative boutique kind of advertisement agencies that we talked about earlier figures in these. And what actually goes on in an ad filmmaking set or a crew? Who are the crew first of all? These are the producer who actually is making or monitoring the whole overall process, putting in the money for it. Let's say the director is there who actually whose vision it is which is being put onto the screen. Cinematographer is the person who handles the camera. The copywriter is the person who's got the script and you understand how the script flows. The editor is the person who works in post production along with the voiceover VO. VO is usually the voice of the person who's actually announcing the brand to the audience while the ad is being played on TV. So steps involved are, first of all, there is a briefing of what the product is and how it should be visualized and what kind of things are required for that brand and what kind of lighting can be used, what kind of shades can be used. Briefing actually is given to the team of filmmakers who actually go ahead and have their own set of actually planning of how to actually do this process. Pre-production consists of many things and consists of many people such as the art director, choreographer, the makeup artist, costume designer. Different kind of people are actually involved in trying to understand what is required exactly for that setting, for that product, and for the people who will be representing, if there are any people representing the product on screen. Next stage is obviously the production of the whole advertisement. You will have a set that you see just like in this picture. You would have a lighting setup, you would have different people. One is a cameraman, another sound operator. You have the talents or the actors who are actually there in front of the camera. You would have a background crew who are actually monitoring everything that is going on, including the director and an online editor who's going to sit and actually make sure that whatever you're getting from the camera is actually being cut on the scene itself. So post-production is the last stage where you actually get everything together in the format of whatever has been shot, and then you sit and then try to chop it up and make sure that they come together in the right format, in the right color setting, in the right sound. Post-production involves all these processes such as dubbing, voiceovers, editing, color grading, etc., to make sure that it is very presentable. So these are the processes that are there in ad filmmaking. These are the different steps. By our understanding of what advertising is, these two units have sort of covered very basics of what advertising is. The open elective is supposed to give you a glimpse into what this whole topic is. We've gone into fairly detail of what advertisement is, what advertising is, what is the history of advertising, trying to understand the concepts, nature, the tools that are being used for advertising. We went through the different techniques and different companies that actually try to make these, the agencies, what are their role, the ethical issues of advertising, where to draw the line and where not to draw the line. And today in this class, we were looking at different process of advertising. What are the different steps that goes into advertising, and also individually, what are the steps of making an advertisement. So we've come till ad filmmaking. Now this winds up the 2 units for advertising. What we'll be looking forward to after this is public relations, which will also consist of 2 units. So thank you for joining this section. We will move on to public relations in the next class. Thank you for attending.